Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. I am Brahma Bull, and tonight I wanted to do something a little bit different. I don't want my channel to just become known for politics, although that will be a big part of it. I want to participate in the culture war altogether. And on the advice from a few friends from a couple other channels, Zax and Salty Texas C, um, they've basically told me I should really go into the things that I love. And although I kind of missed the train on Wheel of Time season one, I am a big fan of the books, and the show was an absolute disgrace. So tonight I wanted to go into an article that I had found back from January of 2021. It was actually from Looper, and it was discussing the things we're going to see in that show. So we'll bring that on up and then take a look, see what they had right, what they had wrong, have a little bit of commentary on it, and just kind of go through the article and see where they lied, where Rafe Judkins lied, and what's been going on behind the scenes. So let's take a look. So this is an article from Looper, and basically, I don't really care about the beginning of it. It's talking about the history of the series. We all know that this is a massive series of books that Robert Jordan actually ended up dying before he could finish it. And we had Brandon Sanderson, who is another fantastic author, take over. Brandon Sanderson was actually selected by Harriet McDougall, who is the widow of Robert Jordan, and they were both, as this article will go into at some point, they are both part of the executive production of the show. So let's dig into this and see what they have to say. So the first season's narrative. So far, the showrunners have not revealed the plot of the first Wheel of Time episode, but they have given interesting hints that might give us clues about what will happen throughout the season. Of course, it's safe to assume that the series will kick off by covering the events of the first book, but some devout fans have investigated further, and by analyzing the episode titles, they figured out a few specific details that will likely make it into the first season. The first three episodes, Leave Taking, Shadows Waiting, and A Place of Safety, which are all chapter titles from the Eye of the World. However, the fourth episode is called The Dragon Reborn, which is actually a chapter title drawn from the second book in the series, The Great Hunt. So they're saying it's safe to assume that the first season will cover events from the first and second books. Then they're saying exciting teasers have been released. Now, since the show's already out, I don't really care about the teasers all that much. We know that they changed quite a bit, but the teasers weren't that exciting when it began. So here's where it starts to get interesting. It's not just for the fans of the book series. So if you've never read the Wheel of Time books, you might be wondering whether or not it's worth tuning into this series. Maybe you've been hoping for a new high fantasy show to dive into since Game of Thrones wrapped up, but you really have to read the whole series before watching the show. Rafe Judkins, the director, says no. The writers crafted the show with viewers who haven't read the books in mind. That is absolutely true. So far they're getting some of it true. Um, the the show is actually crafted specifically for people who haven't read the books, from what I could tell. Because if you read the books, this was nothing like it. Um, but we'll dig in here a little bit. This likely means that the first episode of first couple of episodes will introduce plenty of helpful exposition. Viewers won't be expected to know who every character is and why every location is important right off the bat. Of course, if you have the time and you're a fan of fantasy tales, you might want to check out the books anyway. I highly recommend that because the books actually tell a story where the show is just butchering a story. Um, he said that the first couple episodes will introduce plenty of helpful exposition. Actually, all it did was basically recreate characters from the books in a completely different way than what we had seen in the books. The kids are all aged up. We have a sex scene in the first episode. We have Matt's family being, just a whole bunch of drunks and a whole bunch of domestic violence there. and Perrin is married and seemed to imply that his wife was pregnant. So nothing like the innocent 13, 14, 15-year-old type characters that were in the original books who, you know, didn't really, I mean, they were still innocent. They hadn't, they were excited to see fireworks and a glee man come to town, or even the peddler. So lots of changes there. Then we get into the part that I was really interested in. The reason I found this article is I'm trying to figure out. I know where Brandon Sanderson kind of stands on it because he's talked about it in his own podcast. I know he wasn't a huge fan of some of the changes that were made, but I have not heard anything from Harriet McDougal. And honestly, she should have more creative control than Sanderson did. All he did was come in and write the last three books. He knows the characters, he knows the setting. But Harriet McDougal was the editor, and she should be the one protecting her husband's legacy and his book series. But let's dig into this. Jordan passed away in 2007. Fans were worried that the series will falter without his input. His widow, Harriet McDougal, has been heavily involved in the show's production. Specifically, McDougal has been spending her time on the Wheel of Time set in Prague, where she personally reads all of the scripts and gives her feedback to Judkins. I would love to know what that feedback is, because this doesn't resemble her husband's story at all. I mean, Harriet McDougal probably should take a lot of fault for what has happened with this show compared to what happened in the actual series. Sanderson, McDougal personally chose to finish the last three books of the series. Sanderson read over all the scripts and gives notes to the writers and showrunners. He also spent some time in Prague and gave the team a little extra advice on the set before they started filming. And then it goes on to say, with Sanderson and McDougal involved, the series is in good hands. I couldn't disagree more. Um, we've kind of already pointed out a few things that were wrong about it, but even Sanderson kind of said that he was involved early and then was really stepped back after the first couple months of development. He acted like he was no part of the actual show running experience. And if you read over all the scripts and gave them notes, I can't imagine that they took many of those notes to heart. Expect practical effects. This section doesn't really interest me. Basically, they're saying that the wolf dogs in the show are actual wolf dogs instead of practical effects. So the one thing that they seem to have been worried about getting correctly was that they had actual wolf dogs in the show, when you can't even portray the characters as they are supposed to be. So that doesn't impress me. It doesn't mean anything to me. Will the characters look like their book descriptions? Let's see what they say here. So, after years of reading and rereading the Wheel of Time books, fans have certain ideas about how characters they've come to know and love should look on screen. Yeah, we do, because there were descriptions of all those characters. So, I mean, yes, some of it is headcanon, but Robert Jordan did go into descriptions of people, their size, their hair, lots of different characteristics. So far, some of the show's casting choices haven't quite matched up to the characters' physical descriptions. Yeah, that's an understatement there. For instance, fans have pointed out that Moraine is supposed to be fairly short, yet Rosamund Pike is quite tall. Some have wondered whether the crew might try to make her look shorter through tricky camera work. Well, based on Loyal and Don Rosamund Pike, I think we can say they didn't really care at all, because Loyal is supposed to be. I mean, the Ogiers are supposed to be much taller than humans. They have to have, in different inns throughout the books, they have to have special beds that were ogre sized. And really, Loyal isn't much taller than Perrin or Rand in the series, if he's taller than Rand at all. I mean, the actor who played that played Loyal, I will say, did a great job. They just didn't do any work in trying to make him look like an Ogier. So take that for what it is. For Judkins, making sure the actor is a spitting image of their character in the books isn't a top priority. He said, I am of the belief that my most important job is to bring truth and the heart of these characters to life. I'm much more concerned about acting than physicality. Yeah, he may have been more concerned about acting. He was not at all concerned about bringing truth and the heart of these characters to life. Nothing from the show shows that he cared about what the actual characteristics of those characters are as far as their personalities. And I don't think we saw Nynaeve do any braid pulling. Maybe once. It was a major characteristic of her character. Perrin is an absolute wuss in this. He is supposed to be not necessarily a pacifist. He disdains he disdains killing, but at the same time he knows that he has to protect those he loves. And in the episode where Egwene actually has to save herself from the White Cloaks, and Perrin does nothing but kind of get mad. I mean, that's not Perrin. The fact that he had Perrin kill his wife in the first episode, a character that didn't even exist in the books, also, I mean, it set him on a path that made him absolutely pointless in the first season and possibly throughout the series, because the changes that are being made in this first season are going to create shockwaves throughout the rest of the series. It's a 14-book series. Everybody had a character arc. Those character arcs aren't being portrayed in this in any way. So while some of the characters may not look the way fans pictured them, their personalities will still shine through. Disagree again. Sorry. Have important characters been cut? Naturally, everyone wants to make sure their favorite characters from the Wheel of Time make it into the series. Fans have specifically reached out to Judkins to ask if the writers had cut Min, a woman whose visions help discern the future, or Narg, a Trolloc who is unique for his ability to speak Common Tongue. I don't really care if Narg's in it. Min should be in it, and they should have done her. I mean, she is in it, but they should have done her abilities in a much different way. I mean, I'm not entirely sure how I would do it, but her abilities did not really come across in the show that the way that the book describes them. And I understand some of that is the ability to do the special effects of what Min's visions would be, but it didn't work the way that we saw it, in my opinion. Judkins reassured fans that cutting key characters is the last thing the writers want to do. I genuinely think that we are cutting less than most people think. When I see people ask questions like, are you cutting Min? It blows my mind. I don't know how you do an adaptation without some of these characters. Well, you're doing an adaptation without any of the characters at this point. I mean, Tom Maryland is a shade of what Tom Maryland should be. The main characters, nothing about them resembles their actual characters besides their names. Um, Even with the casting choices, I mean, to be quite honest, if you were coming from a small village way off in the middle of nowhere, you're not going to have a ton of diversity. Everybody's going to look the same. It's only a certain number of families that are in a small farming village. You're not going to have multiple nationalities represented there. You could do that in the major cities. You can do that across all the different countries that are in this series of books. But within one tiny village, it doesn't make any sense. So, really, Rand should be the only person who looked out of place in the Two Rivers. And that's because, spoilers, he isn't from the Two Rivers. So Judkins also revealed that none of the new characters on the show are totally original creations. There's no one fully invented. Anyone new is either a character pulled from somewhere else in the series or a composite of groups or type of characters personified in one individual. And this one should be good. Some changes might be polarizing. The Wheel of Time series includes 14 books, so adapting it into a TV series comes with inevitable changes. Naturally, fans who plan to watch the series are seeking clues about what those changes might be. Sanderson himself has confirmed that fans will notice some deviations from the source material, and that while he's happy with the creative new directions that writers have explored, some fans might not share his opinion. I think since this point on his podcast, He has been very careful, but he has walked that back if that was an actual quote from him. Um, I don't think he was happy with some of the directions that the writers went. I don't think that he likes that Perrin's character was butchered, and I don't think he knows where they're going to take them from there. I don't think he's really going to be all that involved anymore based on kind of what he said. He basically said he gave them notes in the beginning and then they did whatever they wanted afterwards. But I'm not privy to that information, so that's just a guess by me. As the alterations go, I'd say they fell in love with the positive changes made in bringing Lord of the Rings to the big screen. Lord of the Rings, the characters actually resembled the characters. They weren't just willy nilly changed to whatever the hell Rafe Judkins wanted. Peter Jackson actually did his best to make sure that the characters from Lord of the Rings were represented as the characters from Lord of the Rings. Yes, there were a couple of differences, but for the most part, you recognized Gimli, you recognized Frodo, you recognized Sam, you recognized Gandalf. Wheel of Time readers don't recognize these characters as the characters they're supposed to be. I'm certain there will be polarizing decisions made by the team, but the changes are coming from a good place, and I really like most of them. For instance, seeing Tom Maryland playing the guitar might be a welcome change for some fans and an unwanted switch for others. Well, yeah, Tom Maryland played a flute and a harp in the actual series because he was a talented musician and bard who could weave a tale using using just the instruments in his voice. I don't care that he's playing guitar. What I care about is that they had him rob the kids in the very first appearance, which is something Tom would never have done. So, I mean, Tom took the boys under his wing in the first book and actually taught them skills so that they could make their way through the world while they were separated from the others. This didn't happen in the series. I mean, Tom was a throwaway character for the most part. I know he'll be back because we know Tom Maryland's going to be back in the series, but it's not the Tom Maryland that we were introduced in the books. It's not even the same characteristics or, as Rafe liked to say, the heart of the character is not there. Sanderson also stated that the episodes will not be scene by scene recreations of the events in the books, but as long as they have Sanderson's seal of approval, these changes will likely be well received by most fans. I think we found out that they're not. You'll hear a brand new dialogue. So basically, what they're saying here, I don't want to read this part, but they're basically saying the dialogue from the books is not natural. So they're going to change the dialogue in the show to make it more natural. Seems like the writers have had to revise much of the dialogue from the books in order to account for changes they've made to the narrative. Judkins did say that almost all of the dialogue would be modified. So the fact that they decided to change the narrative meant they had to change the dialogue because the dialogue fit what was happening in the story. I don't know where this story's going. Accurate weaponry, not a big deal. I mean, it's medieval weaponry. The Heron Mark sword was not what I pictured. It's not what most people pictured. Tam's sword, didn't really care. I don't think they did a very good job of being true to the things that are described. The writers are ready for a second season. So, like many other series, the production of The Wheel of Time was halted by the COVID-19 pandemic. While fans may be disappointed with the longer wait to weather, Judkins has reassured those who are eagerly anticipating the release that this extended downtime might actually benefit the show in the long run. Yeah, it'll let people forget what happened in the first season so that maybe they'll give it a try in the second season. At this point, the point of this writing, it hadn't been officially renewed for a second season. We now know that it has been. I'm looking forward to the second season because I I don't hate watch things often, but I am going to hate watch this one just to see what happens. I don't I don't think they've been respectful to the show. Rafe Judkins has actually said the more people that speak out against this show, the more likely he is to just change more characters, to make another character gay. I mean, we had the Moraine and Swan Sanche thing where in the books it says they may have been pillow sisters or pillow friends. which implied that they may have been like college roommates doing something, but he didn't come out and say it. And to have them act like they're the loves of each other's lives doesn't make any sense. We know where their stories go in the books, and to just flat out make them all out lesbians doesn't make any sense for their characters or what happens in the books. We'll see where they go with it. I mean, they've already killed off one of the great generals too. He's one of the keys in the end of the books. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure what show or what books they're adapting. It reminds me, quite frankly, of the same thing that happened when The Dark Tower was adapted. The Dark Tower is another great fantasy series by Stephen King. And when they made the movie, they told us, because The Dark Tower and The Wheel of Time are very similar in that the Wheel of Time, it's all about a wheel constantly turning. So you go through one age into another, into another, into another, and then it all comes back to the beginning at some point and starts again. So they've been trying to tell us that this adaptation is a second or a different turning of the wheel. That's why the characters are different. We tried the same thing with the Dark Tower. The Dark Tower ends, again, spoilers, in a way that it cycles back through. The gunslinger gets to the end of his story and is transported back to the beginning of the very first book. Only this time he has an item with him that he didn't have the first time. But when they made the movie and they were going to make the series from the movie, they changed it all up and then said, well, this is a retelling of the cycle that you go through in the Dark Tower. It didn't work then. It's not working now. Every time Hollywood does this, they ruin another fantasy series, and they've got to stop. But that's all I got for tonight. This is Brahma Bull. Thank you very much for checking out the channel. If you could, leave a like, leave a comment, hit that subscribe button, and I will see you soon. Cheers, everybody.